This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to SNS Solutions Seminar Series. Today is a tips and tricks featuring the Fitel S179 core alignment fusion splicer. Wanted to kind of go a step beyond what we normally do with training, and we're not going to take a full hour here, but I wanted to talk to everyone about some of the more detailed software features in the unit. And I wanted this to be as interactive as possible. So if you guys have questions, you can use the chat box. I believe Ashley's responded. Any questions can go in there and we can moderate those and I'll try to respond directly. You can also unmute and speak up. Doesn't look like we have a whole bunch of folks, but the numbers are increasing. We're now up to 12. So feel free to raise your hand. I have my S179 currently connected to my iPad, and I'm using the Fitel app to kind of remotely control the splicer. And I want to show you guys how to set that up. That's going to the first thing that I want to talk about. And I'm hoping that this connection will hold steady because it's all going through my single access point. So bear with me if I have any technical difficulties, but so if you can see on the screen that I'm sharing here, probably familiar with this. This is the home screen for the S179. We're looking at the app version, and you can see that it's broken down a little bit differently. I can go directly to my ARC check history or to my Fusion programs, what have you. The really neat thing about this app is that you can remotely control the unit. So I can, turn my heater on if need be, and just kind of give you an idea there. But we can also do some of, I guess, not non-normal functions. The thing that I use the software update the most for is the firmware update, and that's going to be probably the most for. Hey Don, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Turn your camera on. So the firmware update is probably what most folks are going to use the apps for the most, and that's where I think it makes it easiest because you don't have to use a USB drive to load onto a software program and then stick it into your computer, or into your splicer. So all you need to do with your unit, and what I've done actually, let me back up here. So going to the settings portion in your unit, we'll go click on settings, and down at the bottom here, go down a couple times, is the Wi-Fi setup. We'll click on the Wi-Fi setup. So I would suggest the best way to set up your splicer to connect to a Wi-Fi unit so you don't have to go through the Wi-Fi setup every time would be to connect it to an access point, say at your garage or at your home office or office or wherever it is, and just leave it at that point, and then do all of your firmware updates from that location. And if you're in the field and you want to connect directly to the Wi-Fi on your unit, you could either use a portable access point, something that I carry because I'm doing this type of thing regularly, but I don't expect a lot of people to have that. You can create an ad hoc network where you connect your splicer directly to the Wi-Fi on your phone. That's a little bit more complicated. You have to ID the specific IP address, but what I recommend is just because we're generally going to be doing the firmware upgrades and updates and that sort of thing in the like at the office or at the shop or something along those lines. So just connect it to an access point that you're regularly available to you. You put in the SSID and the password, and at that point you'll be able to connect to the Wi-Fi. Once you're connected to the Wi-Fi, then you can go in and download the app from the either Android or the iOS store. You can just search for Fitel, and let's see if I can give you an idea what the smart app looks like. It's this one right here. Fitel Smart app, and we'll open it up. And that's what we're looking at there. And of course it wants to, there we go. Now it's giving me fits, perfect. So within that, once you're connected with the Wi-Fi, you can connect to the app, which allows you to do remote control. Once again, going to the actually go back here, in the home page from the Fitel Smart app, that's where you would find the firmware update. Another useful item for the app itself is looking at captured images. So if you go in and you need to capture an image for a splice that's maybe substandard or you have questions about, it's really easy to grab that image. And see, I've got some blank ones here. Let's see if I've got a decent image. Looks like it's mainly blanks, actually. And then within the app, it's actually, we can then send that, and here's a poor example, but from a blank image, I could email this to someone, or I could text it right over to a colleague if need be. So that's kind of the other main advantage of using the app, is because it's connected to the API on your phone, you can export via PDF or drop it into a drive or something along those lines. So being able to get the information off of your splice machine through the app is a big advantage. Also, if you are keeping with your ARC check history or any of your failure data history, and or the splicer history in general, and you want to get that information off of your machine. Let's see, do I have a really, there's a .09, it kind of gives me my full splicer. Same thing, I can just go down and either save that information or export it through an email program or something along those lines. So not, outside of those functions with the app, what I primarily use it for is the firmware update and to do trainings like this, and it's actually very beneficial that way. So connecting to the unit and being able to remote control it is a pretty neat feature, but it's not something that we use on a day in, day out basis. But wanted to let you guys know how to connect to the Wi-Fi, use the app, update the firmware. When you do update the firmware, there is a lot of benefits to keeping your firmware version updated. If there are new heater programs or any other features within the latest firmware, that's going to definitely benefit you guys. So, any questions thus far on the firmware update or connecting to the Wi-Fi? Great. So I'm going to go back out here. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and a question I get regularly, is heater programs and what we can do if your little splice sleeves here are not sealing properly. There's actually a great tool within the splicer itself that will kind of help with those items, and it's the recommended course of action for if you have issues with your shrink sleeves. If you look at the tools, whether you want to go back here within the menu, up here in the upper left-hand corner, tools, and then you have down here, obviously, here's the screen capture tool, which is what we were using to get some of those capture images. But just below that is the shrink sleeve adjustment tool. And this is like I said, the best course of action if you have an issue with your shrink sleeve. Usually that comes from a change in temperature, change in atmospheric pressure, or a change in shrink sleeves. Or potentially if the heater programs that are available in the splicer, if they are not, the shrink sleeves that you're using, if they're not available in the heater programs, and we'll talk in a minute about creating your own custom heater program based on the ones that are available. But what I recommend generally is finding the closest one, make sure it's a 60 millimeter or 40 millimeter, depending on what type of shrink sleeve you're using. And then if you're having issues with it, like say the ends are not sealing, then within the shrink sleeve adjustment tool, you find a photo representation, whether it's bubbles on the sleeve ends or something, and then you select that particular program, and it will adjust the heater program. Something to keep in mind when adjusting heater programs using the shrink sleeve tool is that it's not a permanent change to the heater program, but it's a permanent adjustment to that heater program unless you go back and initialize it. So I just adjusted the heater program that is currently on my unit. And if I look at the heater programs available or what I have selected, I am using the S922 sleeves. That's a Fitel sleeve. And I've made an adjustment so that, you know, the ends are showing bubbling. So rather than, I could change heater programs if I change to a different sleeve type, but knowing that I've made some adjustments to that shrink sleeve program, I'm actually going to go back into the tools to the shrink sleeve adjustment, and I'm going to go down and initialize. And what initializing does is it restores that heater program back to its default settings. I'm going to do that because I didn't really have any issues, or I didn't have any issues occurring. So rather than make any semi-permanent adjustments to that sleeve program, I'm just going to initialize it back. Most folks, there are within the heater program quite a few options. There are options from Fitel, the S921, 922s. There are also the smooths. I believe there's a couple options from some of our competitors. I know that there's some Fuji shrink sleeves, the FP60s. I have to go back down this thing. And then there's also heater programs for our sock connectors. And there's another little, what I think is a neat feature in slot 16 is the curl remove, and we'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about splice-on connectors. So within these programs, what I find most folks are defaulting to is either 60 millimeter other or 40 millimeter other, if it doesn't match up to the exact manufacturer you're using. So I've got a AFL FP60s, I have some Sumitomo FPS1s, and I have some Fitel 922s. If I'm using let's say the FP60, which does not have a heater program pre-programmed into the unit, I would just use the other 60 millimeter. And then based on the performance that I'm getting, if you know, the shrink sleeve starts to over melt or be a little too hot, then I would make that heater program adjustment, just going into the menu, tools, shrink sleeve adjustment, and then adjust that 60 millimeter. Oops, I got a shrink sleeve adjustment. Adjust it down. Say I'm getting, once again, sleeves are over shrinking. That usually comes from overheating or a little bit too hot for that particular sleeve. So I'm going to adjust that heater program. The other option, and something that I wanted to get into with the heater programs, is that you can actually create your own custom program. Now you can see within all of these heater programs, I have a little lock up here in the upper left-hand corner. So if I, like for the let me go back here, heater program, the S921 60 millimeter, it's locked. Now I can take any of these locked programs and make adjustments to them, but the first thing I need to do is actually go in, and I like to use the 60 millimeter other. It's a good starting point. You click on or touch the little pencil icon, and that will allow me to copy, and then I go down to a empty slot. I think I'm going to have to go down to here, 23 is an empty slot. Hit the pencil button and paste that program in there. Now we can see that it's pasted in, and I don't have the little lock icon. And so I'm free to make some changes to this program and kind of create my own. So the first thing I can do is, well, where I like to start honestly is I look at the compare. So I'll go down to the bottom and then I'll choose another program like we'll say the S921 250 60 millimeter. And now, based on what I'm looking at, and know, say maybe the S921 power, the 250 program is pretty close. So I want to adjust my 60 millimeter to something similar, or maybe a little bit hotter on the first heat or a little cooler on the first heat. But by looking at doing the comparison, I can actually tell like, oh, well, the other program it goes in on the first heat at 180 degrees. Well, the 921 is considerably hotter at 240. So if if I'm not getting the sealing I want on the 60, maybe I'll adjust that up. Next thing I look at is the second heat temp out, 180 and 220. So you can see that's a little bit lower there. But you can also see the duration is quite different. So each of these variables can be adjusted to create your own heater program. My suggestion is to adjust it in very small increments, 2 degrees, 5 degrees, a couple seconds here or there. We can see just comparing these two programs, the second heat duration, 16 seconds on a 60 millimeter, that's a pretty long time versus 5 seconds, but we can see that the temp is a little bit higher. So what we're trying to do is balance the amount of time it takes to seal that shrink sleeve and versus the proper sealing. So it's not overheating, it's not sticking, it's not doing something along those lines. So that's where I kind of like to do a comparison with other programs just to see where I'm at. You can also just kind of shoot from the hip, go into your heater program. So I think I was down at slot number 23, went up, and make that adjustment. And you just go in and edit. And from here, I can make edits to say I want the temp in to be, we're just going to go at 200. It's a little closer to the 920, 220. And then that heat duration, I'm going to lower it down a little bit, maybe 25 seconds instead of 36, because we could see how much shorter the 922 was. Hence, that's why I like to do the compare. And then down here at the bottom, you can actually go into advanced settings, and then that's going to get you into that second round of heating, what the heat time is or what the heat temp is coming out, if you want to increase or decrease that, and then also the cooling temp and the cooling duration. Like I said, it's really up to you guys on kind of finding that middle ground between how much time it's going to take to seal the shrink sleeve versus how much time it takes me to be prepped for the next burn. You can also turn off the auto start heater or the quick heating mode. I recommend leaving those on. There's no reason not to. My other big recommendation is if you're starting out the day, run your heater a couple times before you run a shrink sleeve to it, just to let it preheat and get up to speed. But the primary reason I wanted to go into the creating your own heater programs is I get a lot of questions about, my shrink sleeve's doing this, or it's sticking in the oven, or it's doing something along those lines. And if you're not using a standard shrink sleeve that has a program that's available, the best course of action is to, use this shrink sleeve adjustment tool. If it's not meeting what you look at, then the next step would be to go in and create your own heater program. And see, I've made some decent adjustments to this one. I'm going to overwrite the parameters and then I can actually make this my default if needed. I could delete it altogether and yeah, I wanted to edit that guy. And I'm going to change the program name to custom. And this will be my first one, 01. And then that way, let me go ahead and overwrite parameters. Yeah, so when I'm scrolling through my heater programs, I can see, oh, there's the custom heater program that I like to use, and I'll set it up. Another thing to note in the home screen on your heater program, if you're looking at the quick start guide on the S179 or the manual, this little icon, it's hard for me to point it out, but if it's right next to the little wheel here, let's see if my it doesn't look like my pointer is going to work either. You can see that there's a rectangle with the icon on the left-hand side. And what that equates to, what that's talking about, go over here to my splicer if you can see my camera. There's a little, let's see, little slider bar here, moves left or right. And that icon is telling you which direction, either to keep that heater open or closed. On most of the heater programs, it has it slid to the left. In my experience, that just holds this little bar down, and I find that you get better performance if you just leave it open, or you can, kind of play with that if you want to. But generally, what I've found is that you, by leaving it open, you don't have the tendency for that shrink sleeve to want to stick in the oven. So something to note as well. I wasn't aware of that until I did a little bit of searching and realized that that little icon there is an indicator for that bar, but I tend to keep it open anyhow.
Did I hear you right there then? You're saying the lid, to leave the lid open and it will stick less? Is that what I heard you say?
No, not the lid. I apologize. So let me switch sources here.
I can't, it's hard to see that. Yeah, I can't see the picture. It's too small.
Yeah, let me just do this really quick.
I'm just talking about the little holder up underneath it.
Yeah, it's the little orange button there. So yeah, if you can see my camera a little better. Just this little bar right here. So that's the closed side and that's the open side. Now you definitely want to close the lid on the heater every time, but what this does is it actuates, you can see this bar here, it will press down on your shrink sleeve when it's in the oven. I find that if I'm using kind of non-standard or shrink sleeves that are not on the standard list, that sometimes they will stick in the oven. There's a couple things you can do there. You can take an alcohol wipe and one of your cleaning, lint-free cleaning swab, and get in and clean that oven out really well. That's the first step that we're always going to recommend. Make an adjustment to your heater program, create a heater program. But like I said, just kind of what I found is like by opening this up and sliding it to the right, the actuator bar there raises. It doesn't put as much pressure on the shrink sleeve. So I find that it allows it to heat in there a little easier, and I don't have any sticking when I'm pulling it into the cooling tray.
And it doesn't affect your overall time? The overall time it takes to shrink the tube doesn't affect that very much?
No, really all that guy does is just holding the shrink sleeve, pressing it into the, and we'll do a burn here to kind of give you an idea. Let's see, here's a 60 mil.
So it doesn't produce heat itself, because that would be a nice feature if it was heated top and bottom.
Right. To my knowledge, and I'd have to confirm with the guys at Fitel, I don't think that I think it's just pressing down on the heater bar to hold it into the oven there. I don't know that has any heater coiled mechanism in it. But does that answer your question, Daniel?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Yeah, it's plenty fast enough as it is. It's as fast as you need it to. It's faster than a double Sumitomo.
Well, and that comes down to the heater program too. And what, like I was saying, with this custom heater program, I can adjust my heat temp out or the cooling time. you know, of course, no one has a lot of extra time to fiddle around with heater programs. But when you run into a problem where you've got specific shrink sleeves and they're just not performing, and the heat shrink adjustment tool's not getting it where you want it to go, then my last course of action is like, let's create a custom heater program. And within that, I can then do a couple different options. Let me pop this guy out. And that one actually didn't seal all the way. So my heater program, I would do an adjustment to, I think you can see that the ends are open. So we'd go into the heater program, or we could just do the edit that guy. And let's see, I actually go ahead down to advanced settings, and then go in and change your temp out and probably the cooling temp duration as well. So that, you know, and that's really that the cooling duration is that little fan there. So I could bring that up to 45, make my fan go a little longer. I'm always trying to find that good medium between how fast is it heating, sealing, heating, and cooling versus, you know, how quickly do I need to prep for the next burn. So, and more than anything, I just wanted to give you guys a, you know, kind of notification that you can do that, not so much that, you know, this is the best way to go about it. It's kind of would be the last course of action after you use that heat shrink adjustment tool, which is just right here in the tools. Or go down and initialize and restore that back to defaults. And continue. Cool. The same thing can be done for your heater programs as well. So let me go back this guy so I can. There we go. Yeah, so same thing can be done for the heater program or the Fusion program. I don't recommend making a huge amount of adjustments to Fusion programs. Heater programs, you can make some adjustments and not get yourself in too much trouble. But the Fusion programs, you know, definitely kind of have the same issue. If you are going to want to make any tweaks to a particular Fusion program, I would start out with the single mode auto, copy, and then paste that into a blank slot. This is going to be way down here at 72. Paste, and then from there we can edit. And same situation, you can have your arc duration, arc power, cleave angle, loss limits. You can set your advanced setting. And your cleave angle, something to note, and I don't ever really like to do this, but you can kind of change the tolerances. Sorry, go back to here. That the machine will allow you to do a fusion splice. So there's a loss limit of 0.20 that would not, you know, be a pass. You could change the cleave angle to 2 to 3 degrees. But, you know, at that point, you're kind of cheating the machine and cheating yourself a little bit. But, you know, like I say, in for this presentation, I just wanted to, you know, touch on these items to give you guys the knowledge that, hey, yeah, I can do that if needed. Same thing with the advanced setting. Now I can actually look at my first arc power, and especially with arc power, arc duration, you want to make very small incremental adjustments. You don't want to go your starting arc power to 50, you know, or to 200. Is going to be a massive change from the existing Fusion program. And generally, we would really only be adjusting the Fusion program is if one of the 70 plus Fusion programs available isn't hitting the exact fiber that you have. Like, we've got Leaf and TerraWave and basically all of the various brand names and types of fiber, non-zero dispersion shifted fiber, whatever is available. If the existing heater programs that are available are not meeting, not able to match, say you're doing some like titanium dope fiber from back in the 90s, might be able to go into the actual fusion program and make some adjustments to the left or the right fiber and be able to have a little bit more success that way. Now, granted, this is way advanced when we're at the at the end of our options for hey, I'm just not able to get a good burn with these two types of fiber or this type of fiber or what have you. There is an option to make some adjustments to that, and like I say, I rarely recommend it. It's generally the heater programs that we're going in and making real adjustments to. Same thing though, you can do it there. So going back into the heater, the settings, was that guy? Outside of the software stuff, adjusting the fusion program and adjusting the heater settings is really what and connecting to the Wi-Fi are the main points that I wanted to connect to or talk about there. And I'm gonna just see if I can get out of this. Stop. There we go. Perfect. So back on.
So if we don't have current software, Eric, is it really important then that we update it? Are there some bugs?
How far back is your software? What's the current?
The machines are fairly current. We just got them in the last few months.
Okay, you're probably at 10.3, 0.3 or 0.1 possibly. It depends on the actual where you're currently at versus like where we are now. Some firmware updates do have some important bug fixes or adding some features, but most of them are incremental. If you're at a old firmware version from 2018 or something like that, I would recommend updating the firmware. And generally, when I'm visiting with customers and we're kind of going through the units, I like to go through, make sure everything's clean, and then I'll also check that firmware version and at least update the firmware while I'm there. It's always
Does
good
it have to be updated in steps?
Say again?
Does it have to be updated in steps?
No, from the app itself, and that if you missed the very beginning here, we connected to the unit through our Wi-Fi, and then I can control it through the app here, the Fitel app. Let's see if I can.
So we have to install the Fitel app on our computer. Sorry, I was late. It wouldn't tie through my calendar, so I had to go in the hard way to get joined. Sorry, I was late.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, yeah, it's on your phone or smart device would be the easiest one. Hey,
okay.
Tell your son we like coffee as well.
Yeah.
Then actually from that portion, if you see on this, see, I'm not broadcasting.
So the app itself takes care of that, I guess, is your answer.
Yeah, and it's fairly easy. There we go. Yeah, so within the app itself, there's just a firmware update, and it'll tell you the model number and the application version. I'm at I was saying 10, but it's 1.3.4. And actually, oh yeah, there's a new version available right now, so we can go ahead and update that the firmware while I'm going on to this next portion.
I guess the reason why I ask is there's some machines I've seen where you can't just go from a really old version to the latest version without, downloading them in steps. It'll crash it or cause bugs if you do that. So that's why I was asking.
And I would say that's across the board with laptops, phones, anything that I've come across. They will tend to, if you don't go in incremental steps, you usually have to do a hard reset or something along those lines. hence the reason why I like to try to keep the firmware updated on the unit as much as I can. And most folks have not downloaded the Fitel Smart app. It's not a necessity to use the unit by any means, but it definitely makes updating the firmware a lot simpler than downloading it onto a USB drive and connecting it to your Fusion splicer. There we go. Perfect.
But I guess the buy-in is it we do need to do it in steps. If I have a really old version on one of these machines that I bought, then I need to go incrementally in steps.
So I don't have experience with going in a big jump. I've seen it on some of our expo equipment, and I can attest to some of the difficulties.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, it can be. There's a trick to it as well. You just do a hard reset at the end, and it will reset the software. But that's for a different. Actually, Tammy's going to be doing a updating program or tips and tricks on the Max series and the FTB ones next week, and that will be something we'll cover, is going in those incremental steps versus a big jump. With the Fitel units, I haven't really done it in a big jump because I tend to keep the firmware updated regularly. When I'm at home, I can connect to my Wi-Fi because it's already set up, and then just open the app and do the firmware update from there. And that's our recommendation, is to set up your Wi-Fi node or set it up so it connects to Wi-Fi at the garage. And then, whenever you're, doing maintenance or inventory or something like that, just check the firmware on it and update it as needed. And I could see I was one step behind on 1.3.4, and I just updated to 1.3.5. So.
Yeah, I made the mistake with the FTB2s. That's why I was asking. So
yeah, no, I
learned that the hard way.
I think that's probably a product of Windows more than it is the actual firmware itself. But I can go on forever about that. With the physical parts of the machine, I wanted to get into today, something that I find as far as the cleaning goes on the unit, or maintenance and care of the equipment. I harp on folks all the time about cleaning your cleaver and making sure the cleaver is in really good shape. The problems I normally have with bad burns are axis offset or cleave angle is bad. So I really wanted to talk about making sure that you get these pads. Let's see, where's my little guy here? So let's see if you can see my camera pretty well. Yeah, there we go. So these pads here, 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 and here on the top, make sure that those are clean from any debris or any buildup. You can use your lint-free swabs and some alcohol or fiber optic cleaning fluid. Also, you can get in and clean the cleaver blade, and I can see just from the edge here, I don't know if the cameras will pick up, but I've got some residue just from cleaving these fibers over and over. So cleaning that blade will definitely prolong the longevity. You can also adjust the cleaver blade. It comes with a little tool, Allen key that goes into the side here. Let me see. Yeah, into a little hole there. And then you loosen that blade, and I believe there's 10 positions from the factory. And I think it's about, yeah, every position should get you well over 1,000 cleaves. I know folks that have never adjusted these, and that's the first time it's being done is when I go into to check out why they're getting bad burns, and we just adjust the blade, clean up the cleaver, and things actually start to move pretty well. Another one that's come up with the cleaning or the care and maintenance of the cleaver, you can see this little roller here that ejects your fiber into the trash can. It is controlled by this little presser nozzle, or I guess a little button here. So when you close the lid, you press down on this nozzle, and then when you release it, it actually kicks that fiber into the trash can with, holding it with this roller and then this little rubber roller here. I found that closing this guy and then just quickly hitting it, banging on it, and then clicking open, sometimes this roller won't engage as well if I just really click it down, versus if I close the door and then just let it close with a little bit slower actuation on the thumb. It will actually engage with those fibers a little better and kick them into the trash can. So it really has a little bit to do with the speed that you're releasing this plunger here. So making sure that guy's clean on the cleaver, and then when you're releasing the door there with a single click, just making sure that you're not just pouncing, like slamming down on it and getting it open as quickly as possible. I know that's, you know, speed is money, and or time is money, and speed is of the most importance. But, you know, just be aware that if you are getting the fibers sticking in there, just try to open it a little more gingerly, and you should be able to get the fiber to kick out. Another little hack, if you have these older style trash cans, and I haven't done this, but I know some folks that can, you just take your scissors or something and clip the corners off of this trash can to open this area up a little bit. The latest version of our cleaver, the 326R, that's specifically for ribbon, has a newer trash can design that is a little more open here. They also, you know, have a slightly different anti-static coating on the inside of the trash can, so it's definitely an improvement. But I find that just making sure that I have plenty of enough an opening and that the plunger's being released, you know, at a little easier than just slamming it down, that helps eject the fiber, no problem.
What other changes are on the R cleaver, Eric? Because one of the things we do here at Wave on large counts, we're stuck with individual splicing. We can't ribbon splice. But what we do is we ribbon strip with your thermal stripper, and we ribbon cleave in our loose tube fiber to save time. So anything we can do to clean that up would be good. We have really good results with that. But
so I've got the new S124s out being demoed by a customer right now, but the main differences, and this is actually comes to if you're using the older style S326, there's a, you know, the chucks are magnetic in the cleaver, but there's a slight tolerance here, so I can kind of change the angle. Now remember, you know, 125 micron fiber, 9 micron core, just a slight, you know, small, if I can move it, I'm moving more than a micron. So my best practice has always been when I lay the chuck in place, I just kind of make sure it's flush to both sides, and that, you know, just to ensure consistent cleaves. And that's kind of something I've always told everyone. But now with the new 326R, there's actually a piece on this side that holds the chuck tight against the rail, so you no longer have to make that, you know, extra little kind of reminder of like, I just want to make sure everything's flush and in there really tight. Now the difference is I actually have to slide the chuck in and press against it so that it holds it in place. So that's one of the improvements, just to make sure that there's no tolerance or change in the angle of the chuck itself. And then the changes to the trash can that I mentioned. I think those are the two major improvements on the cleaver itself. And, you know, they're being in the kit with the S124. They're also available by themselves if you wanted a new cleaver. I haven't gotten word yet on whether that will carry over to the new kits on the S179, but we're expecting to see some improvements for the cleaver that goes with that kit as well. But definitely, you know, just minor tweaks on the new version, but they, you know, it just kind of addresses some of the things that we've, you know, talked about in the past. So, does that answer your question, Daniel? I'll take that as a yes. You're muted there, sir.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. It works. We use the universal clamps in the machine because we're going so fast and doing large counts. Mm-hmm. But yes, thank you for that. Was a good explanation. I appreciate it.
So you have the little what is referred to as the clamp, fiber clamp. This guy, right, in your cleaver. And are you doing that for the ribbon as well?
I'm not ribbon splicing. That's the thing. I'm ribbon cleaving loose tube individual fiber to save time. Instead of stripping one fiber at a time and cleaving one fiber at a time, I'm stripping and cleaving 12 loose tube fibers at a time with a ribbon stripper and a ribbon and a ribbon chuck in your cleaver.
Gotcha.
And then we have 12 fibers ready to go and to be spliced one at a time, all 12.
You know,
and it saves hours.
Yeah, I imagine
on a 432.
Definitely save some time. One recommendation that I would make, because you're doing so many fibers at once, you're not going to get a consistent cleave angle on all 12 fibers. It's just not going to happen. You'll get a good cleave angle, but it's not going to be as consistent across all of them. So you're going to end up having a individual fiber with a slightly different cleave angle than the one next to it. That's okay. One, you know, as long as it meets the minimum tolerances. One thing that I would recommend for you guys is to go into settings and then go down to your data output and make sure the data output before splice and turn on the cleave angle and your clad or core offset, so that before you make that burn, that information will pop up on your screen. Let's see if I can do that. And then you can check your cleave angles. If you've got anything greater than 3 degrees, you might want to recleave that fiber because it's probably not going to give you the best burn. So
that's what we're doing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just make sure that the data comes up and that it's got it, because you know you want to be able to check when you're going through those. But that sounds like a pretty good way to save some time for sure. I've heard the opposite. Guys are ribbonizing and only using their ribbon machine. The thing to remember is that all ribbon machines are a clad alignment machine, and the S179 is a core alignment, so you're going to get a better burn on your core alignment anyway. So there's kind of, you guys might be, you're kind of doing it in the opposite of way I've seen it before, but it makes sense because each burn is going to be better and you're saving time on the cleave. So that's pretty cool.
We're bound by contract. We can't have any ribbon splicing in our network.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting
It sucks.
contract find. Yeah.
When you got 1,200 splices to do in a case, we'd much rather ribbon splice, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Whatever you can do to speed up the process, right? So, of course, and the last thing that I have to harp on is the cleaning the unit, the S179s and the new S112, and apparently Fuji's new 90R all have a removable V-groove, which is patented by Fitel. So we'll see how that goes. But removable V-groove is really awesome because if you do get any, you can actually see there's some carbon scoring there. You get carbon buildup or buildup from the unit itself. If you have that data output set on your machine and your cleave angles are not looking good or your offset, definitely pull the V-groove out. There's an included little brush in the kit. You can clean out that V-groove. You can also get down to your lenses fairly easily, and with a lint-free swab, you can give those guys a nice cleaning. Give the V-groove a clean. If you need to really get in there, you can take this and put it into a soapy solution with Dawn, something along those lines, and then take either the included cleaning brush or maybe a soft toothbrush or a children's toothbrush, and really get in there and scrub the V-groove. Rinse that clean of all the soapy residue, let it dry, and then at that point, once it's out of the machine, you can use your favorite duster to get anything out or to clean it off. But do not use the compressed air in the unit. We don't want to leave any flammable residue in there while we're throwing an arc across it. So clean out your V-groove, clean out your lenses, and then when you are complete with the when you've done that, also take a moment to take the little cleaning disc that comes in there, and you can clean the carbon scoring off your electrodes when you're placing those back into the unit. And then at that point, next step would be to do an arc check. So anytime you're removing the electrodes, whether it be for cleaning or to clean your V-groove, we always recommend doing an arc check right after that. And what that's going to do is just calibrate the arc based on, you've got new freshly cleaned electrodes, so the arc characteristics are going to be different than they were before. So we want to make sure and do an arc check. And the arc check process on the S179 is fairly simple. It's basically the same process as doing a single burn. You just do your cut, clean, cleave on either side, and then move forward with the arc check. And that's going to be standard practice when you're starting your machine up during the day, or if you change elevation or change temperature during the daytime. Go ahead and run an arc check on your unit. And that's something that you probably heard myself or Buck or Tammy or any of us repeat over and over and over. Make sure you do an arc check. So got to harp on that a little bit. And if you want to hear a long version of why you need to arc check, I'll be glad to set up a call with Mr. Stafford. He likes to talk about that in length, and that's Tom from Fitel. If you've been on any of our Fitel presentations, Tom does a great job.
Well, that's been one of my questions or issues. Is I've noticed that as the temperature changes quickly in my trailer, because we get some big temperature and humidity swings, that sometimes we got to do a bunch of it. We got to be doing that all the time. So other times it seems like it's picking it up between burns. I don't know what the threshold is, but it seems like sometimes it's more finicky than others.
I'll show you another trick really quick on the unit here after this burn does. You can, if you do an arc check and it gives you the option to optimize, of course you're going to optimize. The big difference that Fitel does versus everyone else is they actually do a burn back and then check the the gap there. Looks like I've got a passing arc check, but I'm still going to optimize. But to go to what you were mentioning about how often you have to do that, if you go into information, something you may want to look at is the current temperature and pressure. So right now my current temperature is 100.4 degrees. I can tell you in my office here, it is not 100 degrees. The pressure is, I don't even know what that metric is, but it's 1,003. I think that's atmospheric pressure reading. You can look at that information on your machine and see how much it is fluctuating and whether you have to, when you do have to do an arc check. I would be interested to know how often. If you're saying you have to do it often, I'd like to know what the differences are in temperature and pressure. But the machine's constantly taking a recording of both of those metrics and applying it to the arc there. So that's kind of the whole reason for doing an arc check, is looking at the current temperature and pressure and making adjustments there. Of course, pressure is going to change if you change altitude. So that's why we always talk about moving from the valley floor up into the mountains if you've got a day like that. So something to be aware of. But with that, that's kind of the main meat of what I wanted to cover today. Any questions from anyone on any of the either software features or any of the actual hardware, cleaning the unit, or having any specific experience? Or if you've got any questions on something that's come up in the past, feel free to throw them out there.
I've had a few periods of time, and I'm not sure whether it had something to do with a bad batch of CommScope sleeves or what have you, but I've noticed every once in a while the heater seems to go wacky, and it'll get so hot that the fiber is broken inside, and when you pull to just lift it up out of the heater, just the fiber just pulls out with the glue and everything. Like it's still soft, like it's overheating, like superheating the sleeves or something. And we're not changing any of our settings at all.
So does it is that happen consistently out there? Is it like one fiber or multiple fibers, or?
When it happens, it's both fibers pull out of the sleeve with a bunch of glue attached to it. When it happens, it seems to happen intermittently because we have to do large counts, Eric. You know,
Yeah.
we're obviously sitting there for 8 hours and using the machine for 8 hours, and we don't seem to see any buggy things happen if we're just splicing for an hour or two or individual splices. But once we've been splicing for an upwards of 2 or 3 hours straight, obviously we're doing some cleanings and some arc checks and stuff in between. We're not just going 3 hours straight. But every once in a while, it seems like the machines go buggy and we have to reset them. And like I said, every once in a while we get a period of time where maybe 1 out of every 5 sleeves, it's just so hot and soft. You can tell by looking at the sleeve, almost like the heater went wacky and superheated it or something.
Yeah.
And
I've got a couple different, and you know, I don't know if you caught the first part of what we reviewed there, but my first thing I'm gonna say is just go into the tools and then to the shrink sleeve adjustment, and then go down to sleeve ends over shrinking. I think is the one that's going to be a little too hot, or bubble on sleeve ends, and you can adjust your heater program through the heat shrink adjustment tool, and that should lower the temperature at that point. What it sounds like is you're just doing consistently so many burns that heater has gotten pretty hot. The other option would be to leave the door open and maybe run the heater a couple times while you are doing an arc check or something along those lines, just to let it dissipate some of the heat. And then also potentially just opening up this actuator here. And I believe I don't think there's a heater on there, but like I was saying before, moving it to the right and opening it up, that may help with that. But that's the best I could tell you. Would be, it might just be from the regular heating, or the heater's just gotten so hot. Maybe the temperature in the cab or in the fiber trailers.
I mean, that thought makes sense, but the weird thing is the very next splice, it won't do it at all. It'll heat it perfect. So
yeah, so I don't know about, I hadn't seen that. I couldn't. That would be my best guess, and that's what I was saying, is if it's not consistently doing that, I don't know.
I'll see if I can get some video next time it happens to us.
Yeah, definitely shoot me a text or something with that. I'd be excited to see what it is.
It's pretty strange.
Cool. Anything else from anyone? Well, that brings me to actually a full hour there. So I really appreciate everybody. Let me go.